There are more complex problems which you have to deal with separately. But if we look at this common problem, a very simple problem, right? And how to handle this type of transportation problems, what are the ways to solve it efficiently, then we'll have some idea about the about the transportation problem. And then we can also appreciate their real life applications in industry, right? um, So transportation means here specifically we are looking at transportation of goods. That means transportation of materials. Another type of transportation is also there, like passenger transportation. So if you look at the passenger railway or the passenger airlines, so they are passenger transportation. This is slightly different from transportation of goods because, of course, human beings are different than products. So there, the constraints are more complex, and you have to meet certain constraints very strictly. So we will not be discussing that in this talk. In this course, we will be mainly discussing with the transportation of goods, which in fact has become very important during this pandemic, right? So although the passenger traffic, the passenger transportation was severely reduced due to the pandemic, but on the other hand, the transportation of goods have seen dramatic rise, because, right? And you have seen that although we were not able to move from one place to another, but we were getting our supplies, right? Just by sitting at home. You go to market, you see all the products are available, be it fruits, grains, whatever you can think of, it's all available, right? So it was a huge success actually for India, that we have now standardized our logistics system in such a manner that it could survive a pandemic like this. Because otherwise, it was unthinkable, like how to uh, manage this huge demand for different products from our citizens, right? Where there are severe mobility constraints due to the pandemic, right? So it is important to strengthen our logistics industry, um, set up a standard procedure for transportation of goods, uninterrupted supply of materials, right, during disruptions as well. So in this problem, we see a very simple uh, transportation problem. So here you can see, uh, so there are these three sources, 1, 2, 3, right? 1, 2, 3. So these are the different cities in US: Los Angeles, Detroit, and New Orleans. Okay, and these 1 and 2 in the right hand side, they are the destinations, Denver and Miami. Now, suppose the problem is like this: at these sources, that is LA, Detroit, and New Orleans, you are manufacturing certain products. So these are, you can say, manufacturing facilities. And say per day or per month, it is manufacturing 1,000 units of that product, 1,500 units and 1,200 units. So these are called supplies, right? That source 1 is supplying 1,000 units of the product, source 2 1,500, and source 3 1,200. On the other hand, the right hand side, these destinations 1 and 2, that is Denver and Miami, so they are demanding some products. So they may be retailers, retail shops, right? Or third party. So they are demanding 2,300 of the same product and 1,400. Right? So supplies and demands are given, and you will observe here that the total supply is equal to the total demand. So it's a symmetric problem, right? But in many practical cases, it may not happen. It may be asymmetric. That means supplies are more than demand, or demand is more than supply. In which case, there will be some surplus supply or unmet demand, right? For the time being, we are considering a symmetric case, so that the total supply is equal to the total demand. Fine. Now, what is the problem? The problem is you have to decide that which source will supply to which destination and how much. So two decisions: which source will supply to which destination and by how much, right? Because you see, in various combinations they can split themselves, right, and transport to these different places. Okay, so you have to figure out the optimal transportation schedule, so that the cost of transport is minimized. So you have to define a separate term, cost of transport. Now in this example, let us say that we will use trucks or cars, and they have given a cost for this vehicle, that is 8 cents per mile per car, and the miles, the distance between these cities are given, between the source and destination pair is given, this mileage chart, this is given, right? And the cost is given 8 cents per mile per car. Okay. So so this doesn't depend on the load, right? It says 8 cents per mile per car. So it depends on the distance. So even if you send the car half loaded, right, half empty to a destination, you will incur the same cost. Fine. So we have calculated a cost matrix here, that if I send a car from Los Angeles to Denver, we'll incur $80. Right. Now this should be, there should be this is 8 cents per mile per car per unit transport. It should be there, per unit transport, right? So that means, say my unit is say 1 ton. Okay. So if I transport 1 ton between LA and Denver, I'll incur how much? $80. So $80 for 1 ton of transport. Fine. So with this cost information, we have to decide that what is the transportation mechanism, what should be the how much to transport from the sources to destinations, and following which route, right? So these arrows in this problem, they show you the different ways of transport, right? And you have to choose some arrows from them and the quantity of transport along these arrows, so that your cost is minimized. Now for this problem, you can try to figure it out by calculating by hand or manually, and you will see that there are so many combinations that are available that it would be nearly impossible for you to actually say that this is the optimal schedule, right? So that is why there is a scope of applying optimization model here, which we have. Now how to formulate this model? So you see the formulation here, right? So what are the decision variables here? What are the decisions you are going to make? Can you tell me?
How much like we have to send to each place? Like X11 means from Los Angeles to Denver, how much quantity we are planning to send, and similarly other decision variables we can make.
Right. So essentially, from a source 1, I can send it to all destinations, right? But eventually in the optimal solution, I'll select only maybe, one destination or maybe even two. And I want to know that how much we have to send to these destinations. So how to split up these 1000 units, which is the supply here, right? So this is the supply. So how to split it up and send to different destinations, right? So we have defined this variable xij. So xij means the amount of the units of the material, right, to be sent from source I to destination J. Now, if it is 0 for some arcs, that means there is no transport along that arc, right? If it is not, then it will assume some positive value, right, which gives you the quantity. So that is why the sign is xij greater than equal to 0. It cannot be less than, right? Negative quantity cannot be supplied, so it must be greater than equal to 0. Okay, for this problem. Now, what is the objective? So how do I write the objective? Objective is to minimize the transportation cost, right? So cost is given, cost matrix is given here. So we simply multiply these values with the decision variables and we get the objective function. Is it okay? So this is the total transportation cost, right? Is it okay or not?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And then you have to think of the constraints, that what are the constraints. So what will be the constraints? So some will be supply constraints. So for example, if I take node 1, source 1. So source 1 has supply of 1000 units. So, and because total supply is equal to the total demand. So these 1000 units will have to be supplied to different destinations. And some of them should be equal to 1000. So that is why for source 1, we have written x11 plus x12 is 1000, because these are keys x11 and these are keys x12, right? So sum of these two should be 1000. Similarly, we write for the other supply points 2 and 3. And then for the demand also, you see, for demand, this destination 1, 3 arrows are coming from different sources, and some of them should meet its demand, which is 2300 units. So for each demand point, we have two constraints. Okay. So can you tell me whether this is a linear program or integer program or mixed integer program? What type is it? I think the formulation is clear to all of you. Any confusion is there? How we have formulated this problem as an optimization problem? So what type of optimization problem is this? Is it a linear problem, linear programming, or integer programming, or mixed integer programming? What type is it? Or binary integer programming?
It looks like normal linear programming.
Linear programming, right? There is no integer. Xij is greater than equal to 0. So it is like it is a linear program. Decision variables are continuous, right? Now tell me, okay, it is now we understood that it's a linear program. Now, is it in standard form or non-standard form?
Non-standard.
Non-standard. Now, so how to solve it then?
Like adding artificial variables and then proceeding.
Right. So we have equal equations. In fact, here we see that all of them are equations. So how many artificial variables we will add?
5. 146.
Right. So equal to the number of constants. Now you can understand that if you have 5 artificial variables, then when you apply phase 1, so you have to drive all these 5 artificial variables to 0, right? Then only the phase 1 will end. And you can understand that as the number of artificial variables increase, there will be more number of iterations you have to do during phase 1. So a lot of time will be spent in phase 1 just to drive all the artificial variables to 0, isn't it? Even if you try to avoid the two-phase method, you can apply this what you call as dual simplex method, right? So how to apply dual? If I say I don't want to apply the artificial variable and all those things, suppose I want to apply dual simplex method, then what will be the approach? How do I apply dual simplex?
One equation we can replace by two inequalities.
Right. So in that case also, you have 5 5 constants. So it will essentially become 10 constants. Right. So now you see that I have taken a very small problem, that only 3 sources and 2 destinations. Now you try to understand, for a big logistics industry, like American Express and delivery, what is there, Amazon and all those things. They have hundreds of warehouses and thousands of customers, right? Thousands of retailers which they're connected to. So it is very easy to understand that there will be thousands or even lakhs of constraints for those problems, right, of the realistic size. And if you try to implement dual simplex, then automatically the number of constants will be doubled. So suppose you have 50,000 constants, so automatically it will be 1 lakh, which will significantly increase the complexity of your simplex method, right? It will take much more time, it will be much more difficult, many more iterations would be there to solve it, right? So in other way, it is not very efficient. So we will see that for this type of problem, where all of them are equations and of this type, whether we can devise some standard method, some algorithm, which is polynomial time, right, which is easier to implement, easier to solve this type of transportation problems, right? So that algorithm is known as transportation algorithm, which we'll discuss now. So that is basically derived from simplex, the notions of simplex, but it can be implemented very easily and in polynomial time, right? Now, before we go to that algorithm, I want you to observe here for this LP. Can you tell me that although we see 5 constraints, but actually how many independent constraints are there? Linearly independent constraints. Linear independence, right? What is linear independence?
We can combine two or more equations to get another equation. Constant, I mean, yeah.
Right. And in the linear programming, in the simplex method and in all other things, we have basically assumed that all the constants are linearly independent. Right. Why? Because when you try to, do those Gaussian elimination and all those things, right? Having a linearly dependent equation doesn't make much sense, because they can be easily removed, and because they are anyway obtainable from the given set of equations, right? So unnecessarily we do not include linearly dependent equations. So here in this case, can you tell me how many linearly independent equations are there?
4.
4. Right. And why is this?
Because if you add all the equations for supply and then subtract one for demand, you get the other one for demand, because sum of supplies is equal to sum of demands.
Right. And this is happening because the problem is metric problem. Total supply is equal to the total demand. So if you have any 4 constraints, then the other constant you can easily generate. So in this case, we have only 4. So that means if we have say m supplies, so if m supplies are there and n demand points are there, we'll always have, for a transportation problem, symmetric transportation problem, m plus n minus 1 number of constraints, linearly independent. So when I write constraints, it automatically means linearly independent constraints, right? M plus n minus 1. Okay, so this is one observation we have made here. Okay, so now moving next. So we have understood the difficulty of applying simplex directly on it, that why we are talking about some other algorithm, right? And now we will see what is that other algorithm, which is known as transportation algorithm. Can someone check if the recording is on? If it is not, please no.
It's on. It's on.
Okay. Now, as I have said, this transportation algorithm is nothing but sort of a you can call it as a variant of simplex method. So in simplex method, what do we do? First, we start from a solution from a BFS, right? Starting basic feasible solution. For standard problems, it is the origin. For non-standard, it is somewhere else, right? And then what do? You move from one corner point to another, the adjacent one, by choosing an entering basic variable and the leaving basic variable. And we know how to choose, right? The starting and this entering and leaving basic variable. We know how to do this. So now, in this case, we'll do the same thing. So first is the starting basic feasible solution. Now, because we know this is not in standard form, so we don't have an obvious basis as origin, right? So we have to compute. How did we compute in the simplex method? We implemented two-phase method, right? Phase 1. At the end of phase 1, we would have got the starting basic feasible solution for the real problem, right? Here, instead of using phase 1, we use some heuristic actually to obtain a basic feasible solution, a starting BFS. Now, there are 3 heuristics that are there. Heuristic, what is heuristic? What is the meaning of heuristic?
It works good in practice, but no theoretical guarantee.
Right. So it gives you, definitely it will give you a basic feasible solution, but you cannot say anything about its quality, that how good it is, or whether it is actually comparable to the end product of phase 1 or not. These you cannot comment on, right? But it's just like some standard way of generating a feasible solution. That's it. Okay. So it is just a feasible solution which we'll use in the simplex method later on. So for this, to explain these heuristics, we are considering one problem. This is another example, which is this one. So there are, say, 3 silos and 4 mills, right? And the cost of transporting, say, 1 truckload of grains, right, from silo 1 to mill 1 is 10. It may be, say, $10 or some 10 into $1,000. Okay. So this is a unit cost basically. per unit truckload of transport. Right. So this is the cost matrix that is given, and the supply and demand quantities for each silo and mills are given. Right. So for silo 1 supplies 15 truckloads of grains, right? Silo 2 25, silo 3 10. Similarly, mill 1 requires 5 truckloads, mill 2 15, mill 3 15, mill 4 15. And these these values in black, they are the cost of transportation per truck, right? Per truck, per unit truck. So here truckload is the unit. Okay. Now the problem is to find that which silo will supply to which mill and in how much quantities. Right? So this is basically the transportation problem. And here you see the total supply is also equal to the total demand. So it's a symmetric case. So now, without introducing artificial variables, without applying the phase 1 of simplex, how to generate the starting basic feasible solution? So I'll discuss 3 methods, 3 heuristics. So first one is the northwest corner method. How does it work? What is the northwest corner? Is this one, right? This is the northwest corner. So we start from here and assign as much quantity as possible to this cell, right? What is the maximum quantity we can assign here?
10.
No.
5.
5.
Yeah. So demand is 5, supply is 15. So I can maximum assign 5. So the moment I assign 5 here, what is happening? These will be 0, right? And these will be 10. So it is getting updated. The demand and supply, these values are getting updated, isn't it? Now, northwest corner moves like this. It either goes horizontally or vertically, but never diagonally. So this is the rule. You can go horizontal, you can go vertical to the adjacent cell, but never diagonally. Okay. So there are 2 options from 5. One is you can go vertically and you can go horizontally. Now vertically you see, because the mill 1 is already satisfied its demand. So that means these cells, they are already allocated 0. So there is no transport along this, right? So which means the silo 2 will not supply anything to mill 1. Similarly, silo 3 will not supply anything to mill 1. Right? So only option is to move horizontal. So you move to the next cell, and these cells are nothing but what? Are nothing but variables. The decision variables x11, x12, x13, like this. And we are trying to assign some value to these variables so that we have a feasible solution. That is the purpose. Okay. So when I go to the next cell, which is corresponding to x12, then I think there is a possibility of allocating here. So how much we can allocate here? Its demand is 15 and supply from 1 is 10. So maximum is 10 I can allocate. So this 10 becomes 0 and this 15 becomes 5. Right? So the moment it becomes 0, which means these cells are automatically allocated 0. Right? So then you have to move only vertically. You come to the next cell, you see this is 5 and the supply is 25, so 5 here, so this becomes 0 and this is 20, right? Then you move again horizontally. So now I think you will be understanding this, right? So this is 15, so this becomes 15, this is 0, and this becomes 5. So you come to the next cell. So 5 is there, 15. So it becomes 5. So it becomes 0, becomes 10. And then in the last cell, it is 10, and this is also 10. So 10, 10, 10 is allocated. So this becomes 0, this becomes 0. So at the end, you see that all supplies are met, are supplied, all demands are met, right? And you have a feasible solution. What is that solution? X11 is 5, X12 10, X22 5. So like this you can interpret the solution. Okay. This is a feasible solution in which you can meet all demand. But is it optimal? What is the cost? Cost also you can calculate, which is coming as $520 using this cost matrix. You can calculate. So these oval shaped, these orange colored oval shaped things, their values, their costs, right, for that cell. So if you just multiply, these quantities with the respective cost, you will get $520. But you do not know that whether it is optimal or not, because you have not explored all the solutions, and it is just heuristic. So you cannot tell anything about the optimality of the solution. So you can maximum say it's a feasible solution. That's all, right? So see, we did not need to apply the two-phase method, phase 1. We did not need the artificial value, nothing, but we could generate a feasible solution. Okay. Similarly, two other heuristics are there for the same problem, which will help you to generate feasible solution. So the next one is least cost method. What is least cost method? This is simply another heuristic. It tries to assign as much quantity as possible to the least cost cell available. So if you look at the cost, what is the least cost here? You see, you look at this cost matrix. What is the least cost?
2.
Here 2. So which means the least cost method will try to allocate as much possible, as to this cell, in the hope that the total cost will be minimized. But because it's a heuristic, it cannot guarantee it, but it is just intuitively, it is trying to achieve lower cost. So that is why you see here, I have given 15 here in this cell. So the moment it becomes 15, automatically you update this demand and supplies, and then again choose the least cost cell, next least cost cell, right? So finally the solution will be like this. So first 15, then you will assign 5 here, then 15 here, then 0 here, then you will have 5 here, then 10 here, and then you will be 8. Now it's interesting to see 1 0 here, right? Why it is coming as 0 here?
Because we already supplied 15 before, so there is nothing left to supply.
No, that's okay. But initially we so when this 15 and 15, both of them are satisfied. So at the same time, the supply is 0 and the demand is also falling to 0, right? So in these cases, what happens? There will be degeneracy in the solution, which means the rule is that you can only cross out either the column or the row, not both, not together. Do you get my point? So when I assign 15 here, you see this is becoming This is becoming 0, this is becoming 0. So at the same time, supply and demand are falling to 0. So I can cross out only one column or one row, not together. So here I have chosen to cross out this too. So these cells are still active, although there is no supply, but they are still not crossed out. Okay, and why? Because if you do not do this, you will not get the feasible solution of the required size. Because you need to get a solution of m plus n minus 1, these many variables. Right? Are you getting my point or not?
Yes, sir.
Why? Why you need a solution? Why you need values for n plus n minus 1 variables? Just now we discussed.
Number of independent constants.
Is n plus n minus 1, right? That is understood. But here why I am saying that you need to get some value for n plus n minus 1 variables.
Because there are n plus n minus 1 basic variables.
Right. We know that for base, a base must have equal number of variables as the number of constants, right? If I have 3 constants, my size of base will be 3. Similarly, I have here n plus n minus 1 constant. So size of base must be n plus n minus 1. So in this method, least cost method, as well as in the other methods, whenever you see that demand and supply both are falling to 0 at the same time, you decide to cross out only one of them. So when I continue with the least cost method, I will come to this point where this cell will be chosen, right, because of the least cost, but then the allocated quantity would be 0 because supply is 0. So at the end of the solution, what we are getting, as a basic solution, one of the basic variable will be 0. That means x14 in this solution is 0, right? x14 is 0. What does it mean? What kind of solution is this? Is this BFS? This is a BFS, right? But I see one of the basic variable is 0 in the BFS. What does it mean? What kind of solution? Technically, what it is known? When one of the basic variables falls to 0, then what do you call it?
Degenerate.
Degenerate.
Degenerate solution. Right. And you will get an indication that you are going to get a degenerate solution when you see that both supply and demand, they are falling to 0 at the same time. You are bound to get degeneracy. Okay. So this is the least cost method, and you just check on your own whether these values are correct or not, and this flow is right or not. Okay. So I'll just quickly describe the next method to form the basic feasible solution, initial basic feasible solution. This is called Vogel approximation method. Vogel approximation method again is so least cost method has some intuition, right? That if you try to allocate as much as possible to the least cost cell, then hopefully your final this total cost would be less. That intuition is understood. In Vogel approximation, what is the intuition? The intuition is that if you lose out some least cost cell, the cell with the minimum cost, then what is the additional cost you are incurring, and based on which you choose that which one to allocate. So just coming to the example, I'll just make this point more clear here. So here you see I have calculated the row penalty, right? What is the row penalty? The difference between the two minimum costs. That means the first minimum, if we consider this first row, the least cost is 2, right? And what is the next least cost is 10. So 10 minus 2 is 8. Similarly, for the second row, we have calculated. For the third row, we have calculated. So what does this 8 mean? Can you tell me what does this 8 mean? This 8 means that if I allocate something here in this least cost cell, then it's fine. I mean, I will not incur this penalty 8. That means I will not incur this additional 8 units for the next cell, right? But if I do not, then the next best available option will be 10, right? And if I include something here, then I have to bear these 8 units of additional cost. So we have a name for these costs, these penalties called opportunity costs, right? These are called opportunity costs. So opportunity costs are nothing but the cost you are paying for not allocating quantities in the least cost cell, because the only available option is the next best cost, next least cost. So in this way, for every row and every column, we can calculate these opportunity costs, right? And then how should we decide that which cell we have to actually allocate? So we look at all these opportunity costs and select the one having the maximum cost, because you want to avoid that, right? Higher the opportunity cost means that you are going to get larger costs finally, the final solution. So whenever the opportunity cost, so in this example for these 3 rows, this 10 is the highest, right? The 10 is the highest, this one, which means if you miss this 4, this cell, right? The next available option is 14, this. So the difference is 10. That means you are going to incur 10 units more cost, right? Which you do not want. This is the largest opportunity cost. So you better allocate something in this cell having cost 4, so that this opportunity cost is saved. Is the intuition clear?
Yes, sir.
So now you complete this table, you compute the opportunity cost for each row and each column and take the one having the largest opportunity cost, allocate as much as possible to the least cost cell in that particular row or column, then cross out, wherever the demand is falling to 0 or supply is falling to 0. Again, you recalculate the opportunity cost for the remaining rows and remaining columns. So in this fashion, you try to develop a feasible solution using the VM, which you show me tomorrow, right? And then you compare it with the list with the solution of which you have obtained in the least cost method or in the northwest corner method, because you see each time we are getting different solution, because they are different heuristics. So first, in the northwest corner method, we have got a solution having total cost is $520. In the next least cost method, we have got a solution which costs $475. So that means it is an improvement, right? It is giving better solution than northwest corner. And you see what you are getting for Vogel approximation method. In this case, it will give the same solution having the cost 475, but in other cases, in most of the cases with other data, this Vogel approximation turns out to be the most effective one. Okay, so you complete this and see whether which solution you are getting and what is the cost. associated with. So these three methods give you the starting basic feasible solution. Right? You can apply any one of these methods. Okay. But the better the BFS, the higher is the chance that you will converge to the optimal solution faster. Right? So now, tomorrow we will discuss how to start with one of these solutions and then find the optimal solution. How do you do those simplex iterations and actually go to the optimal solution? Okay, this we will discuss tomorrow. Any question?
Sir,
Hmm.
in that last row, the penalty will be 6 actually, because 10 minus 4. 10.
Last row.
Yes, sir. The least two values are 10 and 4, not 14 and 4.
Ah, right, right. Just wait, I'll just check with this one. Ah, no, actually that is not 10, that is 16 actually. See, in this original cost matrix is 4, 14, 16 and 18, right?
Okay, okay.
Ah, so this is actually wrongly typed here. This is 16. Okay, I'll correct it. Okay. My attendance button is not working.